And let me say hello and welcome to the Gerontological Society of America's Career Conversation on Entrepreneurship and Innovation in Aging. I'm Dr. Patty Slatum, a visiting scholar with the GSA and faculty with the Virginia Center on Aging at Virginia Commonwealth University. Before we begin today's program, I wanted to go over a few logistical considerations. Please keep your audio on mute during the event and submit your questions for the panelists via the Zoom chat. We invite you to view the event in the Zoom speaker view, and this career conversation is being recorded and will be available after the event on the GSA website. And I'm joined today by GSA member Dr. Juanita Baksu, a postdoctoral fellow with the Rural Dementia Action Research Team at the University of Saskatchewan in Canada, and Dr. Patricia Hein, who's the founding director of the Center for Optimal Aging and professor in the College of Health and Education at Marymount University. And they will serve as the co-moderators for this event. Juanita, Patricia, and I are members of the GSA Career Conversations work group that plans the career conversations and the mentoring consultancy program. So GSA's Career Conversations provide a forum for an exchange of ideas about issues and strategies to build a successful career in gerontology. An entrepreneur, the topic of today's conversation, is often defined as someone who creates a new business or develops a business enterprise around an innovation. Have you ever wondered what it takes to start your own business or develop a business enterprise? Are you working on an issue in aging that could be addressed by a business idea? During this session, we will explore entrepreneurship and gerontology, and we encourage you to ask questions and to share your insights as well. And Juanita, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Perfect. So to open today's career conversation, I would like to introduce our panelists. We are delighted to have a distinguished group of GSA members with us to share their perspectives on entrepreneurship and innovation in aging. First, we welcome Dr. Walter Booth, professor of psychology at Florida State University. Next, we welcome Regina Foster, owner of Foster Senior Services and doctoral student at Virginia Commonwealth University. And finally, we welcome Dr. Lydia Manning, Vice President of Gerontology at Della Health Tech. Each of our panelists are entrepreneurs with diverse career paths. And now we look forward to learning from each other and learning from you in this conversation. So let's get started. So Dr. Hein, I'm going to turn it over to you now to kick us off on our questions.
I apologize for that and my technology. Alrighty. Well, today we have this very exciting panel. And so our session will be organized in a few questions. And I would like for everyone to be able to also contribute to the questions. So for the time being, one of the questions that we are going to be asking is for our panelists to briefly share their path to becoming an entrepreneur and innovator in aging, and what was the inspiration or driving factor for embarking on this journey. So is there anyone that would like to start with the question? In answering the question.
I can start.
Dr. Manning, oh yeah, Regina, that'd be awesome. Thank you.
Yeah, sure.
For jumping in and getting this conversation started. Ms. Foster.
Yeah, sure. Okay, yeah. So I've always known that I wanted to work for myself eventually, but was unsure of the capacity that I would do so. As a healthcare provider, I knew that older adults were a population that I had a passion to serve, but not necessarily clinically and at least indefinitely. I felt my connection was more personal than just treating their medical conditions. So when I rolled into, and this is a kind of an interesting story, hopefully I won't go too long, but when I rolled into the gerontology program at VCU, my grandmother, who was the matriarch of our family, was diagnosed with dementia. So to watch her decline and the challenges my parents faced in caring for her was pretty devastating for our family. I took it upon myself to take some additional courses, electives that focused on dementia care, and became a certified dementia practitioner through the National Council of Certified Dementia Practitioners, really just for my own knowledge, to be honest. I also started studying Teepa Snow and her principles on positive approach to care, and then realizing that others, including my colleagues, treating patients and friends who were caring for loved ones living with dementia, just needed more training in how to properly care for someone truly in brain failure. It was then that I decided to become a certified Alzheimer's disease and dementia care trainer, as well as a consultant using Teepa Snow's positive approach to care. And that's how Foster Senior Services came about. Now going back to my grandmother, who was absolutely beautiful, I must add, even when she was going through dementia, or even when she was living with dementia, I should say, she's deceased now. She recently passed in August. Her desire to keep herself up and looking good never, ever went away. And it was something that she just ingrained in us, all the women in the family, as we were coming up, to always look presentable when you left the house. So when I would hear campaigns, marketing, beauty products, only in a way to praise youthfulness, it just never sat well with me, nor did it make sense. And so I wanted to change the narrative in another way. And then that's how I birthed my skincare and beauty brand called Queen Age, which is due to launch in the upcoming spring, because I wanted something to empower women as they age, and not coming from a place of fear, as I feel like our current society marketing techniques are when they're targeting older women.
Great, thank you so much.
Sure.
So exciting.
Thank you.
So let me see, Dr. Boot, you have some of your pros to share.
Sure. Yeah, thanks for organizing this, and thanks for the invitation. I mean, technology and aging is my passion, because we all realize how important technology is in our day-to-day lives, how crucial it is, especially during the pandemic, to do really everything. And the potential of technology to support older adults. And what's really drives me, that interesting problem that technology has so much potential, yet technology is often not designed with older adults in mind. So you end up with these great solutions that have a mismatch between the solution and the target population that could benefit so much. So that's really what drives our research on aging and technology, is trying to help address that digital inequity, that kind of problem where not everyone gets to experience the benefits of technology in the same way. So that's what drives me. I'm coming from this more from the academic side, but I've had really great opportunities to work with small businesses, work with entrepreneurs to help disseminate some of this research and get some of these ideas out there, particularly through this SBIR, the Small Business Innovation Research projects that we've been able to be involved in. So I'm coming from the academic side, but I'm grateful for this opportunity to be able to connect with people who can take those ideas forward and bring them into the community in a way that sometimes us academics can't easily do.
Wonderful, thank you so much. Another exciting pros to share, and looking forward to Dr. Manning.
Yeah, I'm happy to share. Thank you for having me and for creating space to have these conversations. I think they're vitally important. I would say for me, my entrepreneurial spirit and my gerontological spirit have always been closely aligned. I too have spent time in more traditional places in higher ed. I think early on, I realized that while being able to educate and to conduct research and to answer questions fed some of my gerontological nature, I also really wanted to be in a place where I could be innovative and creative and be more entrepreneurial. So I always try to create opportunities for consulting, trying to work with businesses or organizations, helping people create gerontologically sound programs, trying to kind of keep feet in all of those worlds. And more recently, I've transitioned into a place where I'm fully in industry, and getting to work in a age tech, geron tech space, again, really using those gerontological skills and entrepreneurial skills to help people design programs, create solutions that are sound. And so I would say that, being a gerontologist, you also have to be a bit of an entrepreneur, even if you are in a more traditional academic space. I think continually trying to understand our enterprise of business, which be it aging, education, technology, I think that you have to really articulate your value add, and rely on those entrepreneurial skills to do the work that's needed from us, for those of us who are in the field of gerontology.
Perfect. I couldn't agree more. I remember when I was starting my research, I felt like a salesperson, like going with my case from door to door, trying to sell my research. So definitely those skills are so precious and needed. So thank you for sharing.
Yeah, very neat to hear about how your personal experiences and your backgrounds, in academia have really helped you to not only kind of identify some issues and problems and challenges that we're experiencing, but also that innovation piece that you're speaking to really, solve and develop solutions. All right, so moving on, what skills or resources have been most useful to you in becoming an entrepreneur in aging? Now, Ms. Foster, let's start with you again. That seemed to work well.
Sure, absolutely. So again, I went to Virginia Commonwealth University. That's where I did my gerontology program. And the program really focused on recognizing, understanding, and disrupting ageism, which has been helpful in reinforcing what I already felt. However, when I decided that, or let them know that I was more interested in taking an entrepreneurial track upon graduation, they really structured my independent study courses around business planning. And so I started joining business networking organizations and found people to partner with in marketing and technology that had skills that I was just lacking in. And so those are the resources that I sort of utilized as I was getting started.
Dr. Boot?
Yeah, thank you. So I think one thing, or a set of skills that's really necessary in terms of innovative technology and aging, is a good background in user-centered design and the processes that are required for that. So thinking about how to do needs assessment, thinking about designing technology solutions for the actual problems that people have rather than the problems you think they have. Once you develop those techniques, prototyping, usability testing with prototyping, going back into the drawing board if that doesn't work, I think all those aspects of interviews and focus groups of figuring out what are the solutions that people need, what are their preferences for the types of solutions, and once you have those developed, can people use that? And then going further as kind of someone from a very kind of clinical trials type of background, efficacy trials, to make sure that the solutions that you're designing are actually working. So I think those user-centered design, that whole process is really critical to designing successful technology innovations.
Definitely, that's huge. And lastly, Dr. Manning.
I was actually just Googling to make sure that these resources were still available. But I started my first consulting and entrepreneurial endeavor back in 2004 and 2005. So many years ago, but I found that state resources were invaluable, right? And so most states have business incubators. I was in Ohio at the time, and so I was fortunate enough to land space in an incubator in Cincinnati, the HCDC, and there were so many supports, free resources, mentoring, coaching, meeting with funders, learning how to engage with venture capitalists, learning to sell your ideas. So I think for me, it was knowing the gerontological piece. I had my training, I had my degree, I went on to get an additional degree, but I knew that I needed support in terms of the business training. So I was really, I made it my business to figure out where to supplement that training and find those resources. And so there are supports available, particularly for women, women-owned businesses. Those resources are out there. So if you're thinking about becoming an entrepreneur, you're thinking about launching your own business, it can be a little nerve-wracking, right, and risky, but just know that there are supports in place to help people meet those goals. So I found those to be useful. And Dr. Booth had talked about SBIR, STTR mechanisms through NIH. And there are, if you can align with other universities or think about bringing your academic partners along with you on the journey, that also can open up doors for you to receive funding and additional supports. So I think part of it is also just silencing some of the chatter in your head, the itty bitty committee that can talk you out of good ideas and taking chances and stepping outside the box. But there are supports in place and that's in place.
Yeah, that's fantastic. So hearing some great tidbits here today, it's just so fantastic, that user-centered kind of patient-centered approach, and really making sure, what you're developing fits with at the user level. I think that's huge. And then also partnerships, what you just mentioned, Dr. Manning, so important. So, if you can forge that connection with academia, so fantastic. And then lastly, that piece about business planning, isn't that so huge? And I find often in academia, that's the one piece that seems to be missing. I know I co-ran a medical clinic. I co-owned a medical clinic for 6 years, and the business side of things, I was not expecting, the HR, the human resources that are coming in. So such great information today. Thank you. Yeah.
Yes, indeed. And when we always develop a plan to expand our knowledge into some new areas, advancing to potential business, there's always so much planning, and especially alternative plans considering some potential challenges. So when we think about your experience with now your expertise in being so successful, what are the challenges that you would like to share with us that could help many of us who are interested in advancing our professions into those new explorations that could help us to also be successful and have a better alternative plans as we keep advancing our career. So I will start with Dr. Manning. When you think about your career development and the challenges, some of the hurdles, what are the most critical ones that we should consider as we start to plan in general?
I think having a good plan is important, right? Like really running your numbers, looking at what your value proposition is, the feasibility of that. I know for me, it was a challenge to switch my gerontological spirit and heart and put it into a format where I needed to translate that and talk about people or a company or an organization's bottom line, like what my business case was and what my impact was. And for me, that was always such a tricky kind of endeavor where, I always felt like it should have been more than the bottom line. And when you're in the world of business, that's what people care about. And so it's still a challenge, a balance between doing good and doing well, doing what's right, but then also having it be a cost-effective, impactful solution where people can really calculate the ROI and feel like what they're investing in, what you're offering is worth it. So that was a challenge, and still continues to be a challenge. I think also getting people to understand the importance of what it means to invite a gerontologist to the table, to help them think through issues or problems or opportunities. It is sometimes it presents a challenge in and of itself to be able to communicate why your lens and why your training and why your skill set is needed and important. And I think being in the field of gerontology, we do a lot of preaching to the choir, and we know our value, But I think it's another thing to communicate that externally, particularly in some spaces where people don't even know what gerontologists are or what they do.
Certainly, very important points. I'm making a note myself, keep on my guide for success, and I appreciate you sharing that. And Mrs. Foster, you brought such a long way from those personal experiences in now transforming them into an additional contribution to the field. And I'm certainly that you have such a rich path in your career and some very unique points that also you have to overcome to be successful.
Absolutely. I think totally agree with everything that Dr. Manning said, but I would like to add that some of the significant challenges that I've noticed face starting a business is just getting the word out that you exist. Marketing, when you think of really large companies that have been around for many years that we all are aware of. I was just talking to my husband the other day, think Nike or Coca-Cola or McDonald's. You have to constantly reinvent yourself because even those companies that we feel we know everything about, and you don't need to market anymore. You really do, because, once you're out of mind and out of sight, people forget about you. So just making sure people are always aware of what you're doing. So I ended up having to hire a marketing team to help me with that, and then help me like virtual assistant team to help me put content out, areas where you're weak. You certainly can't be strong in every aspect, even in your own business. And so those areas where you're not really strong, you may just have to, hire some help for that. And then another hurdle that I'm facing, because I'm not an entrepreneur full-time. I still work as well as operate my business. So that within itself is exhausting, but trying to develop an exit plan. So there's certainly security, and we've mentioned that already, and having a regular paycheck with benefits. But the reward I'm looking forward to is receiving, just knowing that I'm working this hard and building my own dreams versus working this hard and building somebody else's.
Incredible, such a resilience, right? It's an amazing path. So I appreciate, again, sharing with us and how much we admire you for such wonderful innovations and being so resilient with your vision. Definitely beautiful path. And Dr. Booth, I have been like a big fan of yours. I have been having the pleasure to watch your growth and your interplay between academia and business. And I'm just curious, like I said, just knowing how much you have been growing and developing those two sectors, which is quite challenging as well. Just thinking about developing yourself into academia, that's already difficult. And now you're trying to keep emerging those two areas. And I think as well, you must have some very unique points to share with us in terms of those areas of planning and the challenges that you have experienced.
Thank you. I mean, there certainly are challenges coming from the academic side and working with small businesses, and in some ways our goals may be different. I mean, if you're applying for a grant to show that your product works, you're hoping that that's the outcome, that you have very good kind of results, and you're kind of meeting all the benchmarks and milestones that you're hoping to for that grant. But there's a bit of a tension, because the academic side, you want to find out what's the answer, but the industry side also wants to understand what that answer is, but also they're hoping that it's going to show that their product is kind of efficacious and easy to use. So I found that hasn't, when you pick the right partners, and I think you find the people who are really interested in what's the right answer, that hasn't been, in my experience, a problem. That's something that I kind of worried about, that, well, you're a company that has an invested interest in your product working, so let's do the study. But I think everyone, when you find the right business partners, recognizes that the science is the most important part of that interaction. And that's really why I think that the collaboration between industry and academia is so valuable, because we each can bring something that the other doesn't have. I couldn't develop this software package as an academic. and you may not have had the resources to test this in the way that we can, but it's just such a valuable resource. And I think that's something everyone should recognize. It's everyone brings something really important to the table, and by coming together, we can solve these big problems. And also, I mean, the idea that these teams need to be multidisciplinary and transdisciplinary, that's something that's really valuable, and that can be a challenge when everyone is speaking their own scientific language or domain language. But it's something that I think with practice, I've learned you get better at, and you can work together more efficiently once you have that experience working with between industry and bridging industry and academia, and also bridging these different disciplines.
Definitely, for sure. Yeah, there's something about academic, like an interdisciplinary innovation and working together and just forging, all those different perspectives in a room and around a table. It's kind of amazing what innovation can kind of occur and take place there than you could achieve as working as a single individual. So yeah, that's absolutely huge. So lots going on here. So what do you think are the most rewarding aspects of your career? There's so many different sides to look at. And so I'm really interested from hearing from our panelists. Let's start off with you, Ms. Foster. What do you think are the most rewarding aspects?
And I think I had answered that a little bit before. I think that the biggest reward is just knowing that I'm working towards my dream, right? And that I'm also making a difference in the lives of people that I choose to work with. I can go on and on about the rewards I get from being an entrepreneur, but that I believe that personally, knowing that I'm building something that I'm passionate about is the biggest reward for me.
Definitely, that's so important.
Yeah.
Yeah, working towards your own goals and accomplishing those dreams.
Absolutely.
Dr. Boot, anything else to add there? Or?
So yeah, I mean, I think the most rewarding thing for us is when, oh, sorry, my light went out. Most rewarding thing for me is we work hard in our research to develop guidelines for good design for older adults. We've kind of published that, we write books on that. And when people come back to us and say, hey, I'm from this company and I found your guidelines really useful, to know that people are actually using the guidelines, find that useful, and are applying what we're learning. That's always the most valuable for kind of part for me, is when that information from the laboratory that we collect gets out there into the world and hopefully makes a product better, and hopefully makes the lives of an older adult better as a result of the better design that we're able to facilitate.
For sure, that user uptake piece and dissemination is just so important. Dr. Manning, any words to add here?
Similarly, it feels rewarding to me to be in places where I see myself as a connector and a translator, right? So being able to take some of my skills and my training, being able to take, for example, some of Dr. Boot's work, right? And being able to make sure it gets into the right hands of the right decision makers and influencers in these companies and organizations feels impactful. And so that feels like a reward.
Excellent. Great to hear, about all kind of the rewarding sides of it too, because, there are a lot of challenges. And so to be able to hear about, what keeps you going, what's your drive, that's so important. So where do you all see the field going in the next 5 to 10 years?
I see growth. As long as those of us in gerontology are putting in the work and allowing it to grow. Our population is aging. I mean, we know that. So service and product-based businesses that cater to our aging population are definitely needed. So again, as long as we are putting in the work, I can see the profession significantly growing.
Yeah, definitely. That's so huge. I know I was looking at statistics just the other day, and it was like, I don't know, by 2034, there's going to be 77 million Americans over age 65. And so there's so much room there for more business, to develop those innovative solutions. I think in Canada, here where I am, by 2034, we're almost going to be at the 25% of our population mark. I think we're maybe around the 24%. So getting really close there where older adults will be already are outnumbering younger children. So the more innovation, the better. People want to stay at home as long as they can right now,
Absolutely.
especially given, circa the COVID situation. And so whatever we can do to innovate, it's just so important. Dr. Manning, how about you? Where do you see the field going in the next 5 to 10 years?
I think if we have a look at Japan, right, where they are right now, they're already at 28, I think it's 28.7% of the population being over the age of 65. So I tend to think, okay, we should be taking a cue from other countries and other cultures that are where we are going to be. I also, given I'm probably biased in that I'm working with a tech startup, but I think technology and aging there's tremendous room for continued innovation and growth. I mean, we're in the midst of a technological revolution. If you're looking at so much of the data and the action, if you will, health tech is huge. And I think there's definitely a place for age tech in that conversation. And it'll be really interesting to see what our world looks like in 10 years in terms of how we navigate the life course.
Yeah, such a great point. Such a huge role for technology. I think you're so on the money there. And Dr. Boot, anything to add here? Where do you see the field going?
Well, I completely agree. I mean, gerund technology is going to become more important than ever as technology continues to diffuse and technology continues to advance. I mean, we're seeing really exciting things in artificial intelligence and machine learning. We're seeing exciting things in terms of autonomous vehicles, robotics, and extended reality, virtual reality. These are all things that are going to be increasingly present in our lives. And if we don't design those things with older adults in mind, we're going to just continue to perpetuate this digital divide that we see now. Still, even today, 25% of older adults are not online. 40% don't own a smartphone. There's still this present digital divide that seems to be shrinking. But if we don't design these new emerging technologies with older adults in mind, their needs, their preferences, their abilities, we're going to perpetuate this digital divide into the future. So I think there are a lot of exciting opportunities, and there's a lot of exciting work for us to do to make sure that those technologies are accessible and available to older adults.
Definitely. Yeah, that's absolutely huge.
Yeah. Those are great feedback and suggestions. And we do have a question from Michael. So Michael is asking, when forming partnerships between academia, research, and private industry, what are the most common pitfalls, and how do you address intellectual property issues? Anyone want to take the stab on the question for Michael?
Well, I can maybe start with some of these issues coming from the academia side. I mean, every university has a good legal department that helps you navigate those issues. And I think within the context of a university, we've always really depended on folks, our lawyers, to help that, to come to a good compromise, because everyone wants something out of this relationship. The industry partner wants to advance their product and show efficacy. We want to get papers, and we'll kind of, for the things that matter to us, we want that. So I think by discussing these issues very, very early in the partnership, that's really, really crucial. You don't want to get to the end of a project and then kind of run into these friction points where people aren't getting what they hope to get out of it. So I think engaging often and early about this, coming up with language that your university can help you with about these agreements, that's going to be really important to help avoid those issues. And it's not easy. I mean, university lawyers can be very, very fierce in terms of what they want and what they protect. But I think developing a good relationship and making sure everyone gets something out of it, you just have to talk about that and lay that out upfront as much as you can.
Yeah. From our panelists, do you have any more comments to add to Michael's question?
I think for those of us who are educators, thinking back on some of my training, I don't know that anybody sat down and explained how to protect myself as a gerontologist, as an innovator, as an entrepreneur, and how not to just give everything away and thinking, oh, everybody needs this information. And so I think as we're looking to programs, thinking about how GSA and Augie support our gerontology programs, are there ways to build some of that into curriculum, or how do you prepare future waves of gerontologists to be able to negotiate and to have these tough conversations, all while protecting your interests, right, as a gerontologist and as an innovator?
Yeah.
I don't know that I have all the answers for that, but I think we could probably start collectively exploring how to do that.
That's so true.
Yeah, definitely. This reminds me of Miss Foster, what you were mentioning right at the get-go, how you made sure that you really focused in on those business classes and were able to, have that opportunity to include that in your academic training. I think that's so fantastic. Do you have anything you'd like to add here?
No, not much. I'm just listening to Dr. Boot and Dr. Manning. They gave advice that I'm taking in myself, actually. Yeah.
That's perfect. And we do have a question to Dr. Boot. That's by Leach One. So as you mentioned, technology is not designed for older adults. Do you please provide some tips when service providers try to use technology for elder care and to help older adults accept new technology that will promote their health? It's two questions in one.
I'm happy to chime in first, and others, can chime in as well. Training obviously is crucial, that you need to have training and support. And for example, when we all shifted to Zoom 2 years ago, my colleague Neil Charn has created a really wonderful Zoom tutorial for older adults, for people who had never used Zoom before, how to use Zoom. So that training, that instructional support is really, really crucial. But another thing that really is important is to think about how proficiency differs from individual to individual. I think oftentimes we can get into these ageist notions that all older adults have problems with technology and all older adults need help. And that's not true. I mean, there's a lot of diversity within the technology using population. There are some older adults who are more technology proficient than some younger adults. So trying to gauge that training at the right level and not make assumptions is really crucial as well. In terms of how to help and promote technology adoption, I mean, all the classic technology adoption models say it's perceived ease of use and perceived usefulness, kind of explain most of the variance in technology adoption. Make sure people see it as useful and provide them the information to convince them that it's useful, that technology, and also perceived usefulness, help them to understand that they can use it. You can boost their self-efficacy through training. You can boost their self-efficacy by demonstrating it's not really that hard to use. And I think those are the things that you have to go after if you want to boost usage and adoption.
For sure, training is so important. And also, I was thinking when you're talking about training, just having accessibility and resources to be able to afford that technology, that often doesn't come up. And I think that's something else we have to always kind of keep in the back of our heads. Another great question here on our chat board from Suda. If a gerontologist wants to explore entering the consulting field, what are some helpful starting points? Ms. Foster, would you like to kick us off here?
Yeah, sure. So I really just use social media. And again, I know Dr. Boot talked about, just because someone's older doesn't mean that they are not that great at technology. And I'm going to piggyback on that, but opposite, just because someone is younger doesn't mean that they're also great. So I'm a right brain thinker. I'm a creative, always have been. And so technology challenges me also. And because it does that, I, again, hire people that are strong where I'm weak. Nobody in business is strong in every aspect of business. So those areas where I just don't do well, or they frustrate me significantly, I have somebody else that does that for me. But we do have to admit that we are turning to almost an all tech society. And so you have to learn it to some degree. And because of that, I'm using social media to put the word out there. Marketing and technology sort of go hand in hand. And so I'm using social media, just about every aspect of it to help me get the word out there. And again, my team, I say me, I use that very loosely. My team is doing this for me. Yeah.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Yeah, the more team approach we can have to kind of strengthen those areas, the better.
Mhm.
And Dr. Manning, anything to add here? Some helpful tips for starting points.
Yeah, I think in terms of consulting, I would say pipeline approach is a good one, right? Have some projects that you're finishing, have some ones you're starting. I can just think about some of my own hindsight's 2020. You can spend a lot of time writing proposals and sort of over explaining why you're useful. I think sometimes networking, word of mouth, and hearing someone's pain point and sending a quick one pager of boom, here's your problem, here's how I can help you, here's what I can do for you, here's so I can get you from point A to point B is very effective. Quick, easy, pick it up. They like it. They want to engage you. Great. If not, move on. You didn't spend a whole lot of time and energy. I mean, consulting is something that you can do without having to create such a groundswell of overhead. It's really your expertise in your brain. And sometimes it's just finding the right couple of clients. And then from there, in my experience, it's pretty word of mouth, right? What we do, what we know is niche, and people will figure out who they want to work with and how they want to work with you. But yeah, stay away from writing these big, huge proposals and these big case studies.
Yeah, which is sometimes coming from academia, that seems like, you know what I mean? I pull out my pen, start, yeah, definitely.
10 pages, here are all my references, here's, it's a different kind of selling, right? When you're in a consulting space. But I think when you can let people, when you command your expertise in aging and gerontology and you are seen as a trusted advisor, people will want to engage and work with you.
Yeah, definitely, for sure. Dr. Boot, any last tips on consultation that you'd like to add?
I mean, I think we've already heard from the experts, so I won't dive into that one.
Well, that's so great, and such a nice sequel to our next questions and the next topic to develop. The sustainability of those areas that are emergent and that are advancing to non-traditional is so important. And when we talk about the sustainability and the creating the infrastructure, it's always for us a target to prepare the workforce to be able to train our future professionals to be successful. So when you think about training your mentees or preparing your lessons to students or even in conferences, what is your advice for our professionals who will be emerging to those professions that they can succeed? What are the steps? And as one of the questions in our chat was about books and materials, resources. So I think it will be nice that before we end this discussion to think about best practices in developing future professionals to be successful and the sustainability of this area of work. So I will ask Dr. Manning to take the first step. It seems like you have been thinking, like I'm looking at you and you have this critical.
Well, I know my thinking face.
Yes.
Looking at the chat and, kind of what books and what resources. I spent time just looking to see what's out there, right? Who is advertising themselves as gerontological consultants? What are the services they're proposing that they can do, and what is their value add? So I spent time just trying to figure out what's the water look like. I also wanted to say that using LinkedIn has been really helpful. I've been able to connect and network. I think when I was in a more of a traditional academic role, I didn't rely on LinkedIn as much. It felt I had different avenues for networking with other researchers, or my currency was disseminated through different channels. But I do think that LinkedIn can be helpful in terms of, gathering research about who's doing what in the vein of consulting. I think in terms of preparing future generations of gerontologists, I think that it's time for us to stop being shy and bashful in the field and really step up and command a place at the table and trust our training and our expertise. We're needed now more than ever. It's a good time to be a gerontologist. And I think, at least for me, it took me a while to really believe that and to kind of silence that imposter syndrome in my own brain. And so I feel like I owe it to my students that I work with and to any of my mentees that I take on to help them develop that confidence early on, earlier maybe, and to just feel good about commanding expertise.
So true. Thank you. Those are very, very important. And what about Mrs. Foster?
Yeah, so the advice I have for anyone pursuing a career as an entrepreneur, and that's regardless of what you do, is to love what you do and remember your why. As long as it's solving a problem and your heart is in it, I think your ideal customer or your ideal client will come to you.
True. Dr. Wood?
Yeah, so I mean, in terms of training mentees, I think it's important that a lot of folks that I encounter don't even know that these options are available. And I think in education, we need to educate our students that there's more options out there than just the traditional academic route. About half my students these days go into industry positions, go into business. I think we do a real disservice to our students if we don't tell them these options are out there. Partly because, for academic jobs, they're few and far between, and we're pushing out, at least in our discipline, way too many PhDs for assistant professor positions and postdoc positions. So we do a real disservice to our students unless we tell our students that these are options. You can go out there and form your own business. You can work for an industry, or you can work for a small business. These are all things that you have the skill sets to excel at. We are training you, and your tools are really great for academia, but they are tools that are applicable to many different domains.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, those are so critical. And we do have some very interesting questions in the chat. But before we move to the questions, I'm going to take a little selfish approach. So for us who are involved in designing training and preparing curriculum for training our gerontologists and future scientists, what do you suggest for academia, for those institutions that are now training professionals? What should be the more innovation? I still feel like we are not really moving towards that direction of really preparing our professionals for tomorrow and really making them ready to start in the workforce in a way that they're going to be successful. So for the academia, if you have some words of wisdom to add to the academia institutions, what should we be doing to be more proactive and effective in preparing professionals to lead the science of tomorrow?
Yeah, definitely. This is a great way actually to start bringing our session down to a close. If anyone would like to share maybe their pearls of wisdom about entrepreneurship and innovation and aging, maybe we'll start with Dr. Manning. I see you up on the screen here.
I think to echo what I said a little while ago, we're needed gerontologists with our skill sets and our understanding about aging, using the life course approach in our design programs and services and products. I think it's time for us. Finally, people are asking for us in industry, which I find so refreshing. And then I think, Patricia, to your question about, my previous role was a director of a doctoral program in gerontology and a master's program. And I think given my recent exposure to gerontech, I can't imagine having a gerontology program that doesn't have at least one gerontech course in it. I think that that's the wave of the future. USC, they're actively creating a master's program in gerontech. So I think, again, if you look to some of those leaders, it'll be interesting to see what that looks like. And I also think it may sound, for those of you who are teaching courses or advising students at the master's and doc level, I think an exercise and having students write a job description in their industry in which they want to work, a 4-page, single-page job position description where they are needed as a gerontologist, I think is just a wonderful exercise in helping people start to think about how to translate those skills and information into applied settings.
I love that suggestion. That's so helpful. That's such a great idea. Next, we'll move on to Ms. Foster.
Yeah, and that was a great suggestion. In addition to that, I would suggest some business classes for students, because again, everyone's goal is not to go into academia, even those that are pursuing doctorate degrees. So, you know, as you see here, many of us are working for ourselves. So I think that having some courses that will show them that this is also doable will be very helpful. But as far as my pearl of wisdom, what I would suggest, or what I would say, is that we have the power to manifest whatever it is that we desire. And when you align yourself in the direction that you want to go, everything will just work out.
Yeah, there's something about believing in yourself. That's huge.
Just will. Yeah.
Thank you for sharing that. That's so powerful. And lastly, Dr. Boot, your pearl of wisdom.
Yeah, I mean, for students and postdoctoral researchers out there who may be listening, I mean, the problems that we want to solve, I alluded to this previously, are way too big for one discipline, and it's going to involve pushing yourself out of your comfort zone, talking to people from other disciplines. We're talking about gerontechnology. I'm a psychologist. I can't build a piece of software. I can't kind of program an AI algorithm. But in order for me to do the work that I think is important, I need to talk to people in computer science. I need to talk to people in engineering. I need to talk to people over at the medical school. I would suggest getting involved and used to that early. Really helps to understand the different components of what we're trying to do. It really helps to build those relationships and to attack this problem from many different angles. That's really important. I would suggest that people practice that. It's a skill, and you learn how to do this, how to pull everyone's perspective together, all towards a common goal.
Yeah, definitely. Networking and partnerships, that's just so important, so vital. So now, as we close our conversation today, we encourage you to consider whether you find the idea of becoming an entrepreneur intriguing, and whether your interests might be a good fit with starting or joining a business. So to learn more about funding and training opportunities, check out the small business education offerings at NIA Office of Small Business Research. A link has been added to the Zoom chat. Now, in the next few weeks, GSA will be hosting a virtual presentation and a Q&A with NIA Office of Small Business Research staff for those who want to dig a little bit deeper. So stay tuned for our announcement about the date and time for this upcoming opportunity. And I'm going to hand the microphone over to Patty, I guess the virtual microphone.
Yeah, thank you. What an exciting conversation today. I'm inspired. So thank you all. And please join me, everyone, in thanking our panelists for generously sharing their time, their career experiences, their perspectives with us today. Thank you also to our moderators and work group members who've planned the career conversation. And thank you to our participants. Your questions and comments have been great. And a big thank you to Gina Schoen from GSA staff, who does all of the behind the scenes coordinating to make this career conversation program possible. And we're going to be sending out a brief survey following this event for you to provide some feedback and help us in planning future career conversations. It's only 3 questions, very short, so I hope you'll take a minute to do that. And look out for this April session with the NIA Office of Small Business Research. It might be just the thing to help you reimagine the direction you're taking your work and ask some questions. So thank you all and enjoy the rest of your day.
Thanks, everyone.